It appears the BYU quarterback Jake Retzlaff's time as a BYU football player is at an end as he's reportedly hitting the eject button and set to leave BYU.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer at the KSL Sports Zone and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right. Big news coming out of Provo, Utah, multiple reports, ESPN, etc., saying that Jake Retzlaff, BYU quarterback, is facing a big enough suspension due to his admission of consensual sex with a woman who has sued him via a civil lawsuit alleging sexual assault. All that comes down to Jake Retzlaff reportedly is telling BYU players and staff members that he intends to leave Brigham Young University. Now, that in and of itself is significant news because obviously BYU is just over a month away from starting training camp preparing for the 2025 football season. And not to have your starting quarterback coming back obviously has issues in and of itself. But let's try and make heads and tails exactly why we are at this point. Now, Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune, Pete Thamel from ESPN, and for what it's worth, I can pass along what I have heard via my own sources, is the reason that Jake Retzlaff is opting to leave BYU as recording of this podcast, reporting is that he intends to leave BYU. So it's maybe not a done deal yet, but for all intents and purposes, it appears that he is on his way out of the BYU football program. And the reason why is he is facing a significant enough suspension for his admission of consensual sex with this alleged victim via that civil lawsuit that he feels like it's in his best interest to leave BYU and find a new situation for himself. Now, whether you believe the reports of 3, 6, or 7 games, I have heard all of them. My gut feeling is that it was at least 6 or 7 games, meaning he would have missed at least half of this upcoming season. Now, 6 games would have put him in line to potentially return for the Utah game. That's just how the schedule would have shaken out. And then 7 games would have put him after that Utah game getting ready to go to Iowa State. That was deep enough into the season, I feel like, from his vantage point, that he's like, you know what? I'm not going to get the adequate playing time, nor would I get the exposure, I think, in his eyes, that he feels like in terms of giving him an opportunity to continue to emerge potentially as an NFL draft prospect. Now, you may quibble with it if he actually was an NFL draft prospect. You may quibble with his decision on all of this. But the biggest thing to take away from it is that Jake Retzlaff feels it is in his best interest, based on the parameters being set forth here, that he needs to leave BYU. How does he go about doing that? Well, here's the deal. He can leave BYU anytime he wants. He is a graduate transfer. He has recently graduated with his degree in exercise and wellness, as I understand it, just this past April. But the situation at hand is that the old standby of being a grad transfer and being able to transfer at any point, enroll at a new school, and being eligible immediately, that was done away with last year in 2024. They changed the rules that graduate transfers still can leave a university at any point and any time they want. So Jake has the right to leave BYU as a graduate football player. But the issue is, to be eligible immediately at your new program, you needed to have entered the transfer portal at the end of the previous transfer portal cycle. And that ended this past April. It was late April when that 10-day window opened up. For all I know, as of recording of this podcast, Jake Retzlaff's name was never entered into that transfer portal, what am I trying to say? The portal itself during that window. So therefore, based on how things look right now, and I would anticipate we'll get some clarification at some point in the relatively near future. But as it stands right now, based on my understanding of the way the rules are written, Jake Retzlaff is unable to play this fall for BYU or anybody else. Could he opt to sit out this upcoming season and then potentially pursue a waiver to have his year of eligibility reinstated where he could play next year for another university to finish up his career? I think that may be the best play in his hand right now, but who knows? We've all seen that the NCAA has been interesting when it comes to eligibility issues for the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years when the transfer portal era has come about. We have currently Wisconsin suing the University of Miami, Florida, over a freshman athlete who just up and left school at Wisconsin after signing an NIL contract with the Badgers and then enrolling at Miami. Could that be the play for Jake Retzlaff, where he says, yeah, you can try and slow me down, BYU, but I'm going here? Now, where he goes, TBD. I don't have that type of intel to be able to feel comfortable reporting on that at this juncture. But could he follow that same pattern, essentially tell the courts, hey, figure it out? Could he seek an injunction from a court about being able to have immediate eligibility? That very well could be the way he goes about this. But the situation is it leaves BYU needing to find a new quarterback. They obviously have 3 in the mix, I believe, right now. Those would be McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, and then the recently enrolled Bear Bachmeier. All 3 of them are guys that BYU, I'm sure, will be looking at coming up in training camp. It appears it'll probably be a 3-way battle between that trio. But the bigger point to be made is BYU now has a guy who just led them to an 11-2 campaign, a number 13 overall ranking in the final polls at the end of last season. Well, he's now leaving the program and leaves BYU with a whole lot of questions, but there's also plenty of questions about where Jake Retzlaff ends up next, what his next play is. It's a tough deal. And I've said this multiple times on this podcast when we've been talking about the saga. It feels like it's as the Jake Retzlaff world turns. It's a soap opera in many respects. But I've said this multiple times that with regards to Jake Retzlaff, there was going to be no winners in all of this. He gets a civil lawsuit levied against him alleging sexual assault. That obviously is a black eye on his character, obviously. He fires back this past Friday with the formal response from his legal team alleging that this victim was chasing him in terms of trying to extort money out of him. That was the term they used in the filing, almost an entire year after they had cut off communications. This woman and Jake Retzlaff reportedly had no communication during the entirety of the 2024 season. And then shortly after BYU completes that 11-2 campaign and finishes number 13 in the country, she starts alleging what she alleged. And Jake is then forced to respond. BYU, in turn, obviously, is forced to respond after that lawsuit was filed against him in May, just the last month. I said it's an ugly situation. And quite frankly, there are no winners. I'm talking from any angle or side of this entire saga. And it appears that Jake Retzlaff feels that he is facing enough of a significant enough penalty due to his admission of violating BYU's strict and pretty straightforward honor code that he feels it's in his best interest to leave Brigham Young University. And the fallout's just beginning. TBD on what ultimately transpires from here on out, who obviously BYU will turn to at quarterback, what the process of Jake Retzlaff leaving BYU will look like. Like I said, will BYU be able to help him in any way in terms of transferring? And will he be able to get immediate eligibility somewhere on what would be very, very short notice? Because think about this. The month of July, which we are running up on 2 days from now, is traditionally the month outside of media days that happen during the month for the various conferences. Obviously, the Big 12 media days just over a week away. By and large, a lot of coaching staffs, administrators, and the like use this time of year to go on vacation. So what's going to happen here is Jake can be able to find a way to get himself cleared and eligible to play for a new program. How quickly could he get enrolled at a new university and get up to speed in that? Like I said, there are so many questions on every single side of this, and I'll be doing my due diligence and talking to people for the rest of the evening and have more for you guys, hopefully tomorrow, another full edition of Locked On Cougars. But yeah, the ripcord, the eject button, whatever you want to call it, has been pulled reportedly by Jake Retzlaff, and he fully intends to leave BYU. And once again, leaves a whole number of, not number, but a litany of questions regarding his status, what BYU does going forward here. Is he able to extricate himself in this circumstance to fully realize his eligibility clock in terms of being able to play again? Man, there are a ton of questions, and we'll have more for you guys as the situation continues to unfold. So as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to everybody once again who are everydayers. And of course, thank you for being with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.